There's a big debate going on right now in the world of fitness and nutrition. Specifically, you will see it if you are on social media, and in particular, you will see this back and forth debate on Instagram. I often do. Depending on which coaches or nutritionists or dietitians or health coaches that you're following, you're going to get a different perspective. So, on the one hand, we have the calories in, calories out, eat less, exercise more model that many coaches adhere very strongly to and insist that really that's it when it comes to losing fat, losing body weight. Then you have the other camp that says, no, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's all about hormonal factors or things like your thyroid function, menopause, perimenopause. It has more to do with the changes that are occurring as we age, or simply the quality of our food, when in reality, the truth lies somewhere in between these two views. And we're going to unpack that. We're going to also talk about what things affect our metabolism. What is a healthy metabolism? How do we know if we have a healthy metabolism? And we're also going to look at a statement that I've heard really my whole life. And it's usually a woman saying it. You'll never hear a man saying it. It'll be something like, oh, I just looked at that piece of cake and gained 10 pounds, but my husband can eat 3 pieces and not gain anything. Is that really true? Are some people just more genetically or physically prone to putting on body fat and putting on weight and having a harder time? We're going to talk about that as well. So welcome back to the Forever Fit with Carol Covino podcast. I can't wait to dive into all this and more. But before we get started, just a couple of reminders. Be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this podcast. That way you don't miss an episode. And if you have just a minute on hand, please rate and review the podcast. It does help in the algorithm. It helps to move that podcast forward and for more eyes and ears to be on it. And then also, I want to remind you that I am still creating a waiting list for my Faith Plus Fitness membership. I know, the longest waiting list ever. I'm wanting to make sure everything is right and for once not rush in with the details. So it will definitely be up and going by 2025, if not sooner. Once again, I'm working out some tech issues, building it out. So you can find the link to get on that list so you'll be the first to know the Faith Plus Fitness membership. And that link, if you tap on it, it will also explain what is involved with the membership. What exactly is it? What are we focusing upon? And as always, if you have questions, you can find me on Instagram at Carol Covino Fitness. Pop me a message. I am happy to answer your questions. So let's dive into metabolism. So I started the show out by talking about, is it just calories in, calories out? The amount of exercise we get, just almost like a bank account, like JJ Virgin says, our bodies are not a bank account, money in, money out. Is it that, or is it more the quality of our food choices, food timing, hormones, perimenopause, menopause, age? What is going on here? And I indicated that I personally believe that the answer lies between. You cannot ignore the laws of thermodynamics, meaning that if you take in an enormous amount of food and you are low activity, low movement, you're not exercising, chances are you're going to put on weight, you're going to put on body fat. But we can't ignore the quality of our food. That's very important because it plays into not just the macronutrients, which are your protein, carbs, and fats, but it plays a role with the micronutrients. We're going to talk about that. That's a little known fact, that depleting those micronutrients can really have an effect on overall physical health, obviously, but could have potentially an effect on metabolism as well, and our ability to lose body fat and even put on lean quality muscle. So we have to look at a holistic approach. Yes, hormones matter because they can set off, particularly in women in perimenopause and into menopause, they can set off a cascade of reactions in the body that can make losing weight more difficult. It can make us store more weight in the belly, particularly when estrogen declines. We're more likely to put on body fat, and that body fat is more likely to accumulate around the midsection, which is not only frustrating, but can be a detriment to our health. So not only are we looking in the mirror going, oh my goodness, my stomach's sticking out and, how can I get rid of this belly fat? But it also, from a metabolic standpoint, affects our overall health and makes us more vulnerable to certain chronic diseases such as diabetes. So we're going to talk about all of these things and the holistic approach, which is my approach to looking at weight loss and fat loss. It is not one thing. It's never one thing. I wish it were one thing or two things. I really do. It would make my job as a health coach infinitely easier. But you have this bio-individuality, and that's another thing that we'll touch on today. And some people simply are outliers and don't respond the same way. You have environmental factors. What is your environment? I'm not even talking toxins. I'm just talking about, is your environment one in which you can easily get at, fatty, sugary, starchy foods and not the good fat. I'm talking about the kind of fat that's not good for us metabolically. Is your environment making that easier? Like look at Instacart and Whole Foods. Now you can order off Amazon. And now I do order groceries that way. I do indeed. But I'm also very physically active. So to me, it's simply a matter of convenience. But now you got people, there's no effort. Like they don't have to walk to the car, drive to the store, get out of the car, walk in and walk the aisles. And getting their steps in, walking the aisles at the grocery store, they can literally just sit on the couch, order the food, and it's going to come to the door in the form of Uber Eats even, which might not be the healthiest choices, might not be the best choices for our goals and for fat loss. So there's these environmental factors. Who are you around? Who is in your sphere, in your circle of friends, and even in your family? Do you have a spouse that's really on board, or a partner that's on board with eating healthier choices, eating less processed foods, and getting more exercise and more movement? Or do you have a partner who is doing the direct opposite and really not wanting you to do the healthy habit changes? Or perhaps you're in a circle of friends that involves a lot of eating out and a lot of drinking of alcohol. All of these things play into it. A history of chronic dieting. So let's break it down, starting with what really constitutes metabolic health. And really, metabolism is more complex. I'm not going to go in the full definition of metabolism. That's for another show, another time. But you're really looking at energy that you're expending, energy that you're taking in the form of food. You're looking at the effects of stress on the body and how stress and energy can interact. And so I had told you that we're going to dive a little bit more into the stress factor. And when I say stress, I'm not just talking about perceived stress or sitting in traffic or being stressed about meeting a deadline. I am talking about chronic, ongoing stress, and it could be outside factors, but it could also be things going on with inside your body, such as, a chronic illness, or you get a virus, your immune system is suffering. So there's a lot of different stressors. And then we need to consider that there are other things that go into metabolic health: your cellular health, your mitochondria, your inflammation. Inflammation is not all bad. It serves a purpose. If you cut yourself, inflammation is going to help with that healing process. It's when we can't turn off the inflammation faucet, and you've got this low-grade chronic inflammation that is gradually getting worse, particularly as we age. Thyroid, issues with your functioning of your thyroid, reproductive hormones, menopause, perimenopause, these things play into it. And then we have to look at the metrics, like how can we measure metabolic health? Well, look at the quality of your sleep. Are you sleeping enough? Is it good quality? Do you use something to track? I'm not saying you have to, but that can be helpful to see how much deep sleep, REM sleep that you're getting, when you're falling asleep, how often you're waking up, how you're recovering. Stress, your stress load. I always call them stress buckets. And when those buckets are overflowing, that's when we can get into trouble, and we can even get into that inflammatory state based on how our body responds to that stress, because it raises cortisol. Cortisol in turn can cause problems with blood sugar being dysregulated. It can affect micronutrients, so many different things. It can affect the quality of our sleep. Recovery, are you adequately recovering? And I'm not just talking from a workout. I am actually talking about recovering from your whole day's activities and from your stress load. And of course, sleep would be a part of that. Are you having enough times during the day where you kind of just bring it down a notch, take a few deep breaths, step back away from that laptop and away from that stress? Your energy levels, are they low? Are they high? Are they all over the map? Digestion, are you digesting your food? Because digestive problems will play a role in our ability to lose weight and lose body fat. The best place to start with knowing where you're at is maybe keep a log of these things. So keep a log of your sleep, your stress, your recovery, just kind of a perceived level on a scale of, let's say, 0 to 10, like we're looking at recovery, where 10 would be fully recovered and 0 would be not at all. Or sleep, 10 would be the best sleep of your life, 0 would be the worst. Digestion, same thing. So keeping track of those things, and then also keeping a food log of some kind. This might be in the form of MyFitnessPal. It might be written in the notes of your phone, on a piece of paper. Just look at what you're eating and be very, very honest with yourself. It's only for your eyes and your information, and just look at it like data. Chronometer is a great app because it also will track your micronutrients. I'm not a affiliate or representative of Chronometer, but I have used it for myself and with my clients. It requires a certain amount of diligence with logging, but the information you get is top notch. Then we have things, and this isn't directly affecting our metabolism, but it's affecting our ability to lose body fat and weight, and that is adherence and consistency. I've talked a lot about this on the podcast because it's one of the things that I see to being a major obstacle. I see this a lot. People stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, and then they get burned out from the stopping and starting, and they perceive that they're constantly dieting. In reality, they're not constantly dieting because they're coming off the diet, back on the diet, off the diet, back on the diet. And they're kind of this yo-yo, this up and down. So they're not actually chronically dieting in a sense. What they're doing is sometimes they're restricting their food and sometimes they're not. And there's no consistency. And I'm not implying that you should be overly restricted. That's not the implication here. The implication is you find something that will work for your goals, that's in alignment with your goals, works for your body, and that is sustainable. You can do it on the long term, and then you stick to that, and you're mostly consistent with a little bit of room for, let's say you go out for a really nice meal with your family and you enjoy that meal. What you want to get away from is, eating the bag of cookies standing up in the kitchen all by yourself. That would be that would be an unhealthy way of breaking your consistency. Whereas looking and going, okay, there are going to be some times where I'm not as consistent. I just got back from a European vacation of 2 weeks, and we started out in Greece. We went through some of the Greek Isles. Then we went to Montenegro. I always catch myself calling that something else, Montenegro, and from there to Croatia, a second location in Croatia, Slovenia, and then into Italy and Venice, where we flew out from Venice. We spent a couple of days in Venice. Well, things weren't totally consistent. We were on tours every single day. Many times the tours started first thing in the morning, and we'd have breakfast. We might have to wait a span before we eat. Oftentimes on the tour, they would feed us. It was oftentimes really good food, especially in Greece. I wouldn't quantify it as being an unhealthy or processed food. It was very fresh ingredients. And then I tried to get as many steps in. So I did log my steps on my Apple Watch. I did go to the little gym that was downstairs on the ship. Very little. It didn't have all the equipment, but I did my best there. Got additional steps on that treadmill. Then I would go in the spa and sauna and cold plunge and all of the things. So even though my food wasn't really that consistent, and I certainly was not restricting myself. If I wanted to try a few bites of a dessert, I did it. If I wanted to have a piece of sourdough bread, I did it. If I wanted to, eat some Italian food, I did it. I did not hold myself back. I didn't gorge, I didn't overeat, and I was mindful of portions. But what I did do is I really looked at my movement and activity, and I tried to be as active as I could during the day. And then I stayed away from snacking. So there was no snacking. There was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That was it. And that helped me immensely. So I controlled what I could control. So where consistency can become an issue is, like I said, the back and forth. It's that back and forth mentality. I'm on a diet, I'm off a diet, I'm on a diet, I'm off a diet. There's no in between there. And so then you do get burned out. And I've had clients tell me, oh, I'm so tired of tracking. I'm so tired of being on a caloric restriction. But when I'm looking at their actual, let's say their logs, or I'm listening to what they're telling me, oftentimes they haven't been in a continual caloric restriction. They've been in, let's say, 3 days, and then they're off. And then 1 day, and then they're totally off for 3. And then they're back on solid for a week, and then totally off for another week. That is really not, and I'm not a proponent of the word dieting. It's just got such a negative connotation, but I would not consider that a successful nutrition plan for fat loss. It does require consistency. And I thought a lot about why I'm able to stay consistent. And I think I learned it through the bodybuilding community. So if you're new to my podcast, those of you that have listened for a while already know this. I was a bikini and a figure bodybuilding competitor. So I wasn't bodybuilder like with the huge arms and whatnot. It was more focused on symmetry and healthy muscle and being in, like I said, symmetrical and aesthetics than it was on actually the size of the muscle. So I was in that community for a good 10 years. I did my last competition, it's been a little over 2 years ago. I do not plan to compete again for various reasons. But I did learn some things, because with that type of mentality, cheating, and I don't really like that word, but indulging in a temptation wasn't a choice, because I knew I was getting up on that stage. I knew I was wearing this little tiny sparkly bikini and my high heels and lights on me and every bit of my body showing, like nothing could hide. I knew that was coming. And I knew in order to progress or to place in a competition, to win or take top 3 or first place or whatever, that I needed to adhere to a certain way of eating. It wasn't going to happen on its own. And I'm certainly not implying that you become a bodybuilder or do that type of diet. But you can adopt the mindset. You can make it where giving into temptation isn't a choice. You can reframe that within your mind. So for me, that was never a choice. There was only the choices that were in front of me for my meal plan. That was it. Those were my choices. There were only the choices that were in front of me for my strength and my cardio plan. And I followed the plan. And not following the plan wasn't an option. But I think what happens sometimes when we're on that diet on, diet off, diet on, diet off, in the back of our minds, totally blowing it is always an option. And now this isn't guilt or shame. I simply do not want you to take it this way. It is more about mindset, because we all, when I'm not competing, am I perfect? No. I've learned a lot of discipline, but I certainly have days that I don't meet my protein goal, or days when we're traveling where I'm eating things that maybe those aren't the best choices, or days I don't miss my step count, or days I miss a workout. I have all of those things to happen to me. But the big overall picture for me, completely falling off and going backward is just, it's just not an option. I can have a what one of my friends calls a joy meal out with my husband that I enjoy. I can go on vacation and enjoy all those things, but going completely backward and back to some of the habits that I had in my 40s, I'm now 63. It's just not an option. I've moved past that. Even in my early 50s, I was still figuring this stuff out. And I would do a competition. And then after the competition, I would eat all of the things and all of the things you shouldn't eat, and have a huge stomach ache and put on 5 pounds of water from the sodium and be bloated and uncomfortable and have digestive issues. And I did that a few times before I was like, you know what? This is just silly. I am not going to do this anymore. I reined it in because what I found was what I thought I was craving didn't even taste that good. It was like I'd gone so long without it that I was like, oh, this is not a big deal. So changing your mindset and making that not one of your options. So one of your options can be, you know what, I'm going to enjoy my vacation, get as much movement as I can, and make the best food choices I can before me, or maybe just take a bite or two of the dessert as opposed to the whole dessert. Or leave some, I always would leave some on my platter because the servings were pretty good size on the ship. So I would eat a portion, slide the other portion aside. I wasn't worried about waste. I'm like, nope, my health is more important to me than worrying about the waste here. As far as being wasteful with food. I know that's an issue with some people and they feel they need to eat every bite on the plate, but there's something empowering about just doing a little bit and pushing it away. So you're not saying you're never going to enjoy that cake. You're not saying you're never going to enjoy that Italian meal. What you're saying is you're going to have periods of time where you enjoy. But standing up in the kitchen and eating an entire bag of chips by yourself, you're just going to decide that that's no longer one of the choices you can make. Now, it's up to you. I mean, obviously, you do what you feel is right for you. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving medical advice here. I am really not even giving dieting advice. But what I'm saying is mindset can be huge. So what bodybuilders do is they're always thinking of the vision. So they see it and then they bring it to life. They're seeing themselves on that stage and bring it to life. You can do this without all the bodybuilding business. You can do it without, all the cutting phase that we go through and the brain fog and feeling like, our memory is gone and our hair and skin are dry. You don't have to go through all of those things. No need for it. It actually takes you to an unhealthy place if you do it too often. But you can take that part about the vision and you can create a vision for yourself and see yourself that way. And then ask yourself, how does the person in that vision, what does she choose to do? What does she choose to eat? What does she do when she's out with her friends and they're wanting to, I don't know, have 5 daiquiris and a pizza? What does she do? What are the choices she makes? How does she act? And that is the gift of the bodybuilding competitions, is they don't happen without a vision. It's simply the people that don't go through with it, that sign up, get a coach, start training. Believe me, I've had a few. It's why I don't really care to train bodybuilders anymore. There was a period of time that I did it, but if that level of commitment is not there, it's unpleasant for them. It's hard on the coach. You really have to have a vision and a commitment to that vision. But you can take that on a different scale. You can create your own vision. I mean, perhaps you want to do some type of athletic event or take some big hike, and that's your vision, and you imagine yourself being strong enough to do that. Or you really, you're imagining yourself doing a photo shoot maybe, or, by summer I'm going to wear this outfit and I see myself in it. Okay, what choices will get me closer to that? So the vision is very important. You almost have to make it part of your identity, and that's what bodybuilders do. They will say, I'm a bodybuilder, I'm a fitness competitor, I'm a competitor, and they will label themselves. And once again, this isn't a plug to go do it. It's just to take some of the things that are good from that sport and apply them to your mindset and to your life. So you compare that to someone who, like I said, stands in the kitchen, and no judgment. I've stood in the kitchen and eaten these little peanut butter cups, like tons of them, to the point that I'm sick. So no judgment. I've been there, done the thing, made the mistakes. But at a certain point, it just no longer was an option for me. And it's still not an option. Do I get cravings? Yes. Do I sometimes just want to go all out? Yes. But that is not an option. What is an option is going out for a nice meal with my husband, maybe having something off plan, enjoying it, and then getting back on plan the next day. So when we look at the reasons that some people gain fat and others don't, let's dive into this because this is a big one. So we have, of course, our basal metabolic rate, our BMR, and the basal metabolic rate, simply put, is the rate of energy expenditure of a person at rest. So it's not taking into account your exercise. According to some statistics, it can be approximately 60% of your daily energy expenditure. I'm not sure of the accuracy of that, but that's what I've heard. And it is very much affected by lean body mass, which is it's actually a positive thing. It means that it's something that you can increase, because the higher that BMR, the less likely you are to easily gain body fat. Yes, you could still gain weight, but it's something in your favor when it comes to your metabolism. NEAT, which is your non-exercise activity. That's everything that's not formal exercise. So today I went to the gym. The weather is cold. It was snowy, rainy, all of the things. I really didn't want to get wet, especially with the hair that I have that's long and hard to blow dry. I'm like, no, I don't want to get wet. So I went to the gym and I did a strength training workout that lasted, it was a lower body day, so it lasted about an hour. And then from there, I walked on the treadmill for an hour. I consider that formal exercise. I was logging it. And when I say logging it, it was coming up on my watch and then on my Oura ring, so that I was tracking it. And I was formally going to the gym. And this could be a home gym where you walk over to your home gym and there's your bands and your dumbbells and you are set out to exercise. Is that important? Yes. But your non-exercise activity is. That's the activity you do without even thinking about it. The pacing, the fidgeting, the tapping. I used to, when I was younger, I would cross my legs and then that foot and leg would go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And then I would move it to the other side. And then my daughter picked up the habit and I'm like, oh my goodness, I better stop because that doesn't look good. But I fidgeted a lot. And so this helps. It's part of your expenditure during the day. And research has proven this to be true. Now, of course, your formal exercise, in particular, your strength training, plays a role. The more muscle you have, muscle is going to require more energy. You're going to burn more energy to sustain that muscle. Your intake of food and the quality of that food matters. If you intake the correct caloric amount and it's all M&Ms, obviously you're not getting micronutrients, you're not getting the protein you need to build muscle. You're just staying within a caloric range. You're really not, achieving anything with that. So all of these things matter. Do genetics play a role? And this is where people do this thing where they say, oh, I just look at a cupcake and I gain 10 pounds. And my husband or my girlfriend, can eat all she wants. The perception here is that there's some type of genetic difference between the two. And genetics don't play the role that we think they do. Do they play a role? Yes, absolutely. They're part of the game. And in certain types of chronic conditions, certain factors, genetics are going to be stronger than others. So there is a strong genetic component, say with, maybe some cancers and whatnot. But there's something called epigenetics, and that's basically your choices, your personal lifestyle choices can turn off or turn on that expression of that gene. So yeah, it's altogether possible. Perhaps diabetes runs in your family, but perhaps the lifestyle, and I'm talking type 2 diabetes, not type 1, the lifestyle choices have played more into that. My husband's family is a prime example of this. They have all had heart conditions, and he and his brother are the only two living from the family now. It's been very, very hard. He lost his brother to a major stroke, lost another brother to heart failure. Now, his mother was quite old, but she suffered with a heart condition a good part of her life, and a lung condition as well. So a lot of chronic illness there. His other brothers had to have stents and surgery and take medications and whatnot. And yes, my husband needs to be checked because there's some genetics going on there that need to be monitored. But his daily lifestyle choices are taking him a different direction thus far. Yes, he still has to be careful. Yes, he still has to be aware, but those lifestyle choices are very powerful. Genetics give you a baseline. Basically, this is what you've been given, and then you have your environment. Okay, where are you growing up? How are you raised? All of those things, and that you kind of have a baseline, and then you go from there with your choices. Repeated poor choices over a lifetime will have an effect that are hard to reverse. They can be reversed, not impossible, but it can be very, very difficult. So if somebody comes to me and they have had, years and years of yo-yo dieting, it is going to affect the success of the nutrition protocol or plan that I develop with that client to get them results. It's going to be affected by chronic dieting. It's going to be affected if insulin levels are very, chronically high and they're insulin resistant, or they're, a step away from being insulin resistant. If that metabolic health is in general poor, the body fat's very high, and yes, there's muscle, but it's not quality muscle because it is surrounded by this inflammatory fat. That is going to play into their response as they move through their nutrition protocol. So if they don't have as many of these factors that they've had throughout their life, they come in maybe with a cleaner slate, so to speak. I've noticed that those results can go quicker. It's an observation that I've made. Yes, there are, as I mentioned, rare factors with genetics where, boy, they're awfully strong, and there are certain chronic conditions. But with obesity increasing like it is, like you look back to the 1970s and you look back to some of the pictures or video on a beach, it was kind of rare to see people who were overweight or obese. Now you see it everywhere. And you can't tell me all those people are suffering from genetic issues. All those people have a slow metabolism because of genetics. It's not true. It couldn't be true. There's no way that could happen, excuse me, in such a short, brief period of time. Our choices matter. So I look at this as disempowering. When we blame menopause, we blame perimenopause, we blame age, we blame genetics, we blame mom and dad for those genetics. That's very disempowering. That's taking away your power. That's say, this is happening to me and I have no control over it. There's nothing I can do about this. I personally don't want to feel that way. I don't want to feel like somebody has just completely taken away my power. I want to feel that I can make a difference in my health with my choices. I can make a difference in my body fat percentage and muscle mass with my choices. So that is always going to trump genetics. They really are, over emphasized, I believe. Now, menopause, yes, and perimenopause in particular, because perimenopause is a roller coaster and there's no stability. There's really no balancing out hormones because they're up, then they're down, and then they're you've got estrogen too high, estrogen low, you've got ovulatory cycles that are skipped, you've got a problem with cortisol and stress regulation. So yes, that is a very difficult period of time, but you can still have a positive effect on your weight and body fat percentage with your choices. If you are consistent with your choices, because I've seen it, I have a couple of clients I'm thinking of right now in perimenopause who have really turned it around despite really having some obstacles to get past. And I do mean obstacles, health obstacles plus the hormonal cascade. But they're doing it, they're getting the results, and they're doing it with choices, with lifestyle choices. So very important. Then, of course, there is our environment, as I talked about, which is the people around you, the people in your circle, who's in your house. Are you keeping things in the pantry that are a temptation? Can you just throw those out and clean it out and be done with it, or replace it with something that's a better option? Can you make better choices when you go out to eat? So the environment plays a big role as well. So you want to apply nutrition in an individualized way. This is what I try to do with my clients as much as possible. Can I make some generalizations? Yes. I can talk generally about macronutrients, in particular protein. I can talk generally about strength training. These are things that are going to, in general, be beneficial for most of the clients that I work with, most of the women that I do work with. But you have to look at everything, the context. So what have your habits been over the last few decades or years? Your height, your weight, your bone structure. Some people are bigger bone than others. I'm rather small boned. And age, stage of life, activity level, body fat percentage, muscle, movement, stress, sleep, and once again, a lifetime of poor habits. And your nutrition has to take all of those things into account. So to simply make a blanket statement like, well, he can eat whatever he wants and I can't, that won't work. Really look at it objectively. Now, I notice it can be very popular on social media to give this perspective that it's all hormones or this is happening to you and you're a victim. I recently made a post and I did say something like it's not your fault, but what I meant, and I'll explain the post in a moment, is it's not your fault the way your body's reacting if you're making this choice that you didn't know wasn't the best choice. So let me put it back in perspective. So I was talking about how with weight gain and with fat gain, often individuals, the food choices they're making are creating more cravings, which then can create more weight gain. So I was specifically talking into cravings. How can you control cravings? And I was saying, basically, you might not know this. This is not your fault, but the way you structure and put together your meal will help with those cravings. Protein is very satiating. It's very filling. That's going to help. It's going to slow down the blood sugar spike from the meal. It's going to help stabilize your glucose. If your glucose is stable, if your blood sugar is stable, insulin stable, you're going to experience less cravings. You're going to be more metabolically healthy. You're going to have more of a handle on your eating habits. That first meal of the day, very important. Does it have protein and fiber? Fiber, once again, very filling, and it is going to help slow down that blood sugar spikes. If you have a carbohydrate like oatmeal with your, say, your eggs, and then you've got some fiber in the oatmeal and maybe you're putting in some fruit, yes, you're having carbohydrates and you're having sugar, but it's going to be slowed down by the protein and by the fiber. So there's something to be said about taking control of how you start your day, how you structure your meals. What I don't agree with is when somebody's just in that victimhood where it's all my hormones. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm doing everything right. Nothing works. No diet works for me. Nothing works. I did this. I did that. That is a victimhood mentality. And oftentimes it's erroneous. I mean, unless somebody's got a rare condition of some sort, it's oftentimes simply not accurate. There are things we can do. We talked about the societal changes. Once again, that's things like having the food right at your fingertips. And then we talked about feeling like you're dieting when you're not really dieting. that can be a reason you're not getting results, because you feel deprived. And I've been there with this too, because I've done this in the past, not recently, but I've done it in the past, where I'm restricting and then I'm kind of overindulging, restricting, overindulging, and it can feel like I'm restricting all the time. It's really weird, even though I am like going off the wagon, so to speak, and having things that are off plan. It can feel like I'm chronically dieting because you're starting all over all the time. And it makes it hard for your coach to help you. It makes it really hard for you as a health coach. It's difficult for me to give someone the help they need without the consistency, because I can't change anything. I can't tweak anything, because the client is tweaking themselves. They're going up, they're going down, they're going here, they're going there. And again, this is not a shaming. I think if we can recognize patterns, then we can change them. If we can be honest with ourselves, not beat ourselves up, but be honest and go, you know what, I think I am doing that. Let me see what I can do to be more consistent. Let me see what I can do to get rid of some of these other habits that are holding me back. And asking yourself, is this moving me forward or is this moving me back? Nutrition is the driver for fat loss, but exercise is the sustainability part. So the nutrition is obviously going to be forefront to driving that fat loss. You can't exercise your way out of it. But exercise plays a role, and all that daily movement plays a role, but it plays more of a role on the other side. So when you get ready to sustain your results, that is going to be more of a factor. Are you truly lifting weights? Are you just playing around with some light weights? If you're playing around with 2-3 pounds, and I understand if you have an injury, you have to do your best. I've been there. I just had back surgery a few months ago. I get it. I get how we have to work around pain and injuries. But most of us, there are some exercises at least that we can do where we can push to that point where we don't just knock out 12, 15 reps, but we're struggling to get those 8, 10, 12 reps, maybe even 6 reps. We're struggling to get those 6 reps. We can bump up that intensity a little bit, because if we're saying we're strength training, but we're really not strength training, we're really not pushing that envelope of strength, then the results are not going to be the same. We're going to quickly run down stress and the effect on micronutrients. So first of all, you have your HPA loop between the brain and the adrenal glands, and that's an oversimplification, but I wanted to make this simple to make a point. So basically, your adrenal glands are producing cortisol in response to stress. That is normal. That's what's supposed to happen. You think of your fight or flight, and you think of how the cortisol is preparing you for fight or flight, preparing you for action. This is normal. And short-term stress is not a problem. Daily stress is not a problem. We're supposed to have a certain amount of stress. We're not supposed to be stress-free. So I don't want to fearmonger here, but I do want to say it's the chronic stress that is affecting your health, where it just never stops. Maybe you're going to bed that way, you're waking up that way. A good part of your day is in that stress zone, and it could be not just perceived stress, but it could be the load of internal stress. Even over exercising can be a negative thing if it's tipping it past that point. Cardio can tip it to a point where it's creating too much of oxidative stress on the cells. So it's all about finding that formula, that balance. So long-term effects of stress: insulin imbalance, blood sugar problems, appetite control, gut inflammation, immune system problems, and then the big one is the depletion of micronutrients. And here we go. It directly depletes magnesium. This is key. Magnesium is responsible for, I've heard, anywhere from 300 to 500 different processes. There's different types of magnesium. They do different things. I actually supplement with a powder I believe it's 8 different types of magnesium. I've seen a huge difference. I just talked to my physical therapist that's helping me with my back. He's been using it, and he has seen a difference as well. So that is key, and it gets very depleted when when our cortisol is continually high, chronically high, or high when it's supposed to be low and low when it's supposed to be high, we wind up depleting. It can't be tested, so it's not in the tissues. Magnesium is in the blood, making it even easier to lose that magnesium through the kidneys by being excreted through the kidneys. B5 and B6, B vitamins in particular, are depleted, but B5 and B6 are very tied to cortisol. Niacin is affected, and niacin affects our mitochondria health, our cellular health. C and E, both of those are antioxidants that can neutralize the effects of oxidative stress. So if we're exposed to toxins in the environment, vitamins C and E can help to neutralize those effects, but they get depleted by chronic stress, by cortisol. Zinc, another one that is directly depleted, and calcium, not one we think about, but it's also depleted. It doesn't show up on serum labs, blood tests. It's involved in the firing of the nerves, among other things, and depletion can actually cause your body to break down its own bone. So it's going to try to get this calcium any way it can. And so this can lead to, of course, an acceleration of osteoporosis. Indirect effects of cortisol and micronutrient imbalance. So this is what we're talking about. Just to back up a second, stress, cortisol depletes micronutrients and then has these other effects. So we're specifically geared on the micronutrients right now. So gut issues, because stomach acid is inhibited by cortisol, problems with iron, feeling heavy, bloated, even diarrhea, SIBO, and hyperthyroid is another, or hypothyroid, excuse me, not hyper, but hypothyroid, intestinal permeability, that's a mouthful, and even overeating. Overeating and undereating can be caused by this micronutrient imbalance. It can be a good idea to have a good B complex. I take one that's methylated because you don't know how you methylate B, so it can be good to take that. If you're not taking other supplements, I don't take a multivitamin because I'm taking so many different things individually. Mine is really geared for me individually, so I don't take a multivitamin. But if you're somebody who's not taking much, it might be something to consider doing. Manage stress, and that's a big one. We don't want to eliminate stress, we want to manage it. That means taking time out of your day to breathe, time out of your day to meditate or pray, time out of your day to be thankful and have some really good, positive, and happy thoughts. Time out in nature, walking. I'm looking out my window right now. It's rainy, but just time out in nature, time in the sunlight, getting that fresh air. Journaling. Some people really get a lot from journaling. I kind of go in and out of the journaling. At times I'm very consistent with it, other times not so much. But for me right now, what is working is some deep breathing, concentrating on my breathing, prayer, thankfulness, really big, and that's a part of my prayer, and that's really working for me quite a bit right now. So I hope that this has brought you a lot of value. If you have enjoyed this content, be sure to rate and review the podcast. Make sure you're following wherever you listen, or on YouTube. Be sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss an episode. If you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, please do so. The link is in the show notes. And Fit and Fierce, you can tell I am still jet lagged. So I feel like I'm going to play back this recording and I'm going to find some little things I said that I didn't mean to say. I've been doing it all week. We had almost 30 hours of travel to get back with only 2 hours sleep. And boy, I'm better than I was, but I'm definitely not recovered. Faith plus Fitness, the membership, Faith plus Fitness. I don't know how I got my Fit and Fierce program in there, but I did. That membership will be for faith-based Christian women, but I want to extend an invitation. If you want to learn more about the faith. Maybe it's something you haven't explored and you just want to come in and get the benefit of the exercise and training plan, because that's going to be a big part of this membership, and the nutrition and any education I give around these subjects and around health. I am a certified functional medicine health coach, so there's going to be elements of that in there. You can get all of that benefit. The faith, you're not going to be asked to, lead Bible studies or prayers or anything like that. It's just a supportive community based on really based on faith-based principles, based on Christ, based on the love of Christ. And that is where I'm coming from. It's not from a judgmental way. I think a lot of times people see Christians very negatively, or they have a political connotation with it. But true faith is not anything about that. It's really very different, and I really would like to share that with you. So join the wait list. I promise you it is coming. I am working hard behind the scenes. I'm a one-woman show. I don't have a team, so things take me a little bit longer. Stay tuned for the next episode of Forever Fit with Carol Covino, and in the meantime, I wish you every blessing. Bye for now.